Adrian, good morning.
Good morning, Patrick.
Hey,
How are
before
you?
I'm well, thank you for
Yeah,
asking.
good.
I'm already on a tangent. My day has already taken a turn for the better. My wife's preparing something for dinner, which is great because neither one of us cook very much. And so when
Mm.
she said she was going to do that, it caught me off guard. And she said she needed 8 pieces of crispy bacon for whatever the meal was. And would I make the bacon? I said, yeah, gladly. So I
Yeah,
made the bacon, and as it
off to a good start.
turns out she only needed 4. So I got 4
Bonus.
pieces of crispy bacon as a mid-morning snack. So my day is
Wow,
fantastic.
that's pretty good. Now, do you think she knew that and she was just setting you up for a little boost to the day, or was this just kind of oversight?
I think she's trying to submarine my fitness is what it is. I think that's probably what it is. But
A little sabotage.
yeah, I succumbed to that quickly. So today's topic is a question from somebody that I actually had the pleasure of meeting in person, which was very cool. I was traveling a few weeks ago, and I was in the Chicago O'Hare airport.
Mhm.
Just a nightmare of a situation. And
Well, it's usually pretty relaxed there. I mean, not a lot of people, not a lot of gates.
It's just a monstrosity.
Definitely
And
well thought through, all of it.
this individual came up to me, somebody in their early 20s who just graduated college. I think if memory serves, they were going to Washington, D.C. for some sort of internship.
Mm.
And he was like, hey, he's like, you do the podcast with Adrian. I was like, yep, certainly do. We chatted for a bit, bid him farewell, and he boarded his plane. And then a few days later, I got a Instagram message from him. And the Instagram message is going to be the topic of today's show. So that's our little background. His name is Henry. So he says, hey, Pat, it's Henry, the kid that you met at the Chicago airport. Do you think always being the last person doing the workout is a sign of your fitness not improving if it happens consistently? I just ask because the 3 CrossFit gyms I've worked out at, I always seem to be the last person huffing and puffing. Or maybe it's more of a sign of a weak ego than a weak engine. If you have any thoughts on this, I'd be super eager to know. Thank you. So that's all the information we have about Henry. I saw him, shook his hand. I don't know any of his numbers.
Yep.
Or any
Don't
of that
know how
kind
long
of
he's
stuff.
been working out.
Right.
Obviously been working out long enough that he's gone to 3 different
Yes.
facilities. Who knows how long he's been at each one? Who knows what the circumstances are around that? But I think there's enough there that we can start a pretty good conversation.
Yes, and I think there are some things in this question that transcend just
Absolutely.
Henry. I would say, just to start off, what jumps out at me with this, and this is a recurring theme, is getting fit is relatively simple. People are hard.
Yes,
if you can
100%. Yep. This
figure,
part. What's between the ears? That's where things get complicated.
Yep. And
in so many endeavors in life.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
So without knowing much more about it, where does your mind start to go when you hear this question, these sentences?
My mind immediately jumps to something that I think everybody should be really grounded in, and it's easy to lose sight of at times. But that is just comparing yourself to yourself. So many of us, I think, we're motivated by working out with other people. It is motivating to see how you stack up in a group. It is motivating to have somebody that's close to your level of fitness that you kind of go back and forth with.
Right.
But at the end of the day, that's just one tool that can help keep you in the game. And while you're in the game, it can help drive your intensity a little bit and maybe push you to do things that you might be a little bit more reluctant to do on your own in a healthy way. And I think that's the real utility there. But at the point that comparing yourself to somebody else starts to bring you down, starts to create a negativity around getting in and getting the job done, the utility's gone. And you have to really keep an eye on that. So for most of us, and when I mean most of us, I mean all but like the very, very, very tippy top people that want to use CrossFit as a competitive athletic outlet, either professionally or semi-professionally, whatever. If you're outside of that, which most of us are, then you have to be firmly rooted in comparing yourself to a past version of yourself. And that's got to be the bedrock from which you act. So am I getting fitter? Am I not? That question should only really be answered by what have I done lately? how does my performance today, this week, this month stack up to where I was 6 months ago, a year ago, 3 years ago? And there's your answer right there. It doesn't really matter what the person next is doing to you, although it can be helpful to check in from time to time. But yeah, you can't let that dictate whether you think you're making progress or not.
It's funny because, and what you said is accurate, but it's easy to dismiss it because the whole you versus you thing, it sounds corny. It sounds like it sounds like a cliche phrase that, it's just easy for some marketing and advertising company to splash somewhere. It's you versus you and this, that. But it actually is true. It's not just fluff. It's not just a feel-good meme. It really is the case. I mean, everybody has so many different strengths and weaknesses. Everybody got a different night's sleep. Everybody has different stressors. Everybody has a different athletic background. So we're going to get all of these different people together, and they're all going to do the same workout at 5 p.m. Great. The workout is the same, and darn near everything else is different. And so there's going to be a huge disparity on the leaderboard for an almost incalculable number of reasons. And so the you versus you, it truly is 100% accurate. And it's funny, it's easy to sit here at this phase of life with as many dumb things that I've done and I can reflect on. I remember being where Henry wasn't caring very much, because when I first heard this statement from him, and it mattered, the first thing that popped into my mind was, who cares? Like, who cares if you're last in the class? But the truth is, most people care because we're human beings. And that's a very normal feeling and emotion to have. And for me to sit here, you to sit here and say, hey, it really is only the effort that matters. As accurate and truthful as those words are, it may not take the sting out of, oh, there's my name again near the bottom of the leaderboard, and I tried really, really hard today. This kind of sucks, and then what you're left with after that is trying to take a step back and ideally through these podcasts and conversations and, lessons learned that we've had and the people that we've met, gain some sort of broader perspective that ask yourself, why are you even there in the first place? Why did you walk into the gym on that day? Like, ideally because you had a goal, whether it was to make friends, to be part of a community, to improve your strength and conditioning, you're concerned about your long-term health. All of those goals that I just said right there can be accomplished dead last on the leaderboard.
Yeah.
Every single solitary one of them. So if your goals fall anywhere on that spectrum, then I understand as a fellow human being that it just feels good to be ranked a little higher. I get that. But you are achieving and pursuing your goals, and you're in the right environment. Now, if your goal is to win every single workout and get a gold medal around your neck at the games, okay, things are different. But that does not seem to be what we're dealing with Henry. It's just like most of us are, a normal human being, good days and bad days, got an ego like the rest of us. Even if we try to keep it in check, it rears its ugly head every now and then. But I would encourage him to look at his goals, and I have a feeling that those goals are being met darn near regardless of the leaderboard placement.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. And, I'll add on the flip side of that, to play devil's advocate a little bit, I think we've queued it up pretty nicely. Hey, it really is you versus you. Hey, you really do have no one else to compare yourself to. And, you shouldn't let this sort of competitive aspect of fitness that can be a real benefit, can't let that turn into a negative. The flip side of that, though, is you've got to be honest with yourself about the effort that you're putting forward. And so if you're coming in and you're just kind of going through the motions and you're not really taking it seriously, and I'm certainly not suggesting that Henry is or is not doing either of those things, but you do have to take stock from time to time and say, okay, hold on a second. I've built the habit of being here. This is great, but am I actually applying myself to the task? And holding yourself to a certain level of accountability is really important. So that's kind of the second consideration. First is don't get your head too wrapped up into what's going on the leaderboard, but don't fall off the other direction either and say, oh, it doesn't matter at all, and it gives you license to kind of not apply yourself. That's not a good road to go down either.
Effort matters.
Yeah.
And not to go down a rabbit hole, but speaking about effort, this is a random thing, but it somewhat applies. I got a great just came out of the blue text message the other day from your friend and mine, Curtis Bowler.
And a great human being. Love that guy.
A national treasure. And
absolutely.
He texted me just a random Glassman quote out of thin air. And the quote was, there are no bad intervals, only poor efforts. It just made me giggle. Like,
that's awesome.
It's such a great, like, quintessential great quote. But what you're saying, it's the effort, the effort that matters. And if you're showing up to that gym and you're putting in the effort, again, as corny as it sounds, that really is what matters. And there are two things. Here's the wonderful thing about CrossFit, right? Maybe, hey, Henry, I don't know. Statistically, it doesn't make sense, but maybe, this happened. You happen to show up to 3 different gyms that most people there have been on average with a superior athletic background to you and have been doing CrossFit like twice as long as you. That's possible. It's statistically low, but it's possible. But here's the great thing about that. That may influence where you are on the dry erase board at the end of the workout. But here's what's great about CrossFit, because it's emotionless and it's mathematical. As you're curious as to whether or not your fitness is going in the right direction, that's what CrossFit's all about, my good friend. So what doesn't care about any of that is it's your deadlift, it's your back squat, it's your 5K run, it's your Fran time. If you're doing well-rounded programming that's got you short, medium, and long, light, moderate, heavy, weightlifting, gymnastics, monostructure, the whole 9 yards, and you can take a look at your emotionless data, and everything, generally speaking, has a nice, steady, upward trend. Again, circling back to it, what you're doing is working, my friend. The effort you're doing the effort you're putting in is paying off. And even if you're not happy with what's the leaderboard is showing you at the 5 p.m. class, you can sleep well at night knowing that you are on the path to improving your fitness. So that's the great part about CrossFit.
There's some side benefits too that I think might be a little less obvious. And this is one of those things that difficult to quantify, but I think there is a lot of utility inside and outside the gym. So you've got a result. It's public every day. People can see that you're towards the bottom end of the class.
Right.
You have to deal with that. Like you're showing up, you're having to go through this process. And part of that process is you reaching out, asking for some feedback on it. That's valuable. It's not often that people consider how you build resiliency through times in your life where the outcome wasn't what you wanted it to be. And that's an opportunity that sounds like Henry's got a lot. And that's great. I mean, if you have something where you're not getting the result that you're looking for on a regular basis, it's difficult in the moment, but you can still remain positive. You can still remain motivated. You can still show up and get the job done. That's a great skill set to be able to take a situation that might be unpalatable and not be bothered by it and keep moving forward. That's huge. And a lot of people that have a natural aptitude towards certain things, they're severely lacking in that particular skill because they've never really been confronted with it. And when they do get confronted with it, then you see this giant meltdown, or like they fall apart completely because they're just not used to being in a position where they're not the shining star. So you've got a lot of opportunity in that to be way tougher in some regards due to that process than some of the people that it just comes more naturally. So that's a positive thing if you can harness it correctly and keep your head in the game. The other thing I'll say on that is, if you stick around long enough in anything in life, whether it's fitness or whatever your pursuit is, even professionally, I think everybody finds themselves at some point in their life where they are the weak link in the room, so to speak. You step into a room and you're like, oh man, I am clearly not the smartest person here, or not the most experienced, or, whatever it might be. I'm the low man on the totem pole, Everybody's going to be confronted with that from time to time in their life at some point. And a great example, right? You brought up Curtis Bowler. If yourself, Curtis Bowler, and myself were to get together and do a lifting session, I'm lowest on the rung right there. no matter what. And it's going to happen at some point that you're going to be around people that's the case. They just, for whatever reason, they're going to excel where you may not. It's going to happen. And learning to deal with that, I think, is a very important part of the process. So don't let that, if it is distasteful to you to be in that position where you're last, see if you can harness some of the benefits of that. See if you can use it as a resiliency check where, I keep coming back. It doesn't really bother me. It's no big deal. My mind is stronger than that. And it's not really what it's about anyway. So just another perspective.
I like showing up. It's grit and mental toughness.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to show up when you're winning everything.
Totally.
It's really easy. You get there early, get a good spot.
That's right. Yeah.
But you get a fancy bag and your knee sleeves,
Mm-hmm.
but when things aren't going your way, if you continue to show up, that's a level of strength that may not be physical in nature, but I'm here to tell you that's going to serve you well in life, just as much as a good deadlift and a back squat, if not more. And hey, if you're last, let's say that you're dead last. First of all, you're probably being too hard on yourself, because most people are you last all the time? Is it all the time? Or does it just feel like that? Maybe it just feels like that, but I'm sure you get some good workouts every now and then. But even if you're last at a CrossFit gym, which generally speaking are full of wonderful psychopaths who take their fitness way more seriously than the average bear. So you're in a good group, even if you're near the end, by the way. You're swinging for the fences just being inside of a CrossFit gym. And so, wait, what's that saying? What do they call the person who graduates last from medical school? Call him doctor, right? You're still doing great. Allow me to ask you an off-the-cuff, personal, potentially embarrassing question, Boz.
Oh, my favorite kind. Let's go.
Because I'll pay you a compliment begrudgingly, and then I'll ask the question, the old compliment sandwich, right?
Yeah, perfect.
You are one of those people from the outside looking in anyway, from when I, used to watch you lecture, run professional development courses, seeing what you do at the games and all that stuff. From the outside looking in, it seems like cool as the cucumber, and everything's doing great, and, just always just on the ball and well prepared and never at a loss for what to do.
Oh, I'm glad it looks that way.
When you, do you have any, personal little anecdote or story, and it could be academic, social setting, work, whatever, basically some environment or situation that you found yourself in, that it was relatively important to you to do well, but it wasn't going well, but you still kind of had to, I don't know if anything, I put you on the cuff. My life is littered with them. I can get a couple right now.
I have several that jump to mind right away. I mean, I give you one from a way back time in my life. This is going back to when I was in college. I was studying music at the time, and I had wanted to be a symphony player. That was kind of the early stage of life.
Didn't we all? That's a common path.
Yeah, just very common. And I had a really important audition. The school that I was going to was a relatively smaller university. I wanted to kind of make a jump into a bigger program. I was going through a 2-year program. This was going to be a bridge to a more serious program at a larger university. And so I had a really important audition, practice for months. You go down there, it's you in a big room with a piano a pianist that accompanies you that was provided by the school. And then you have, 4 of the professors of the music department sitting at the end of this big room behind a big desk, and you just sit there and you play. Oh my
goodness.
And from the first note, I was like, oh, this is a disaster. That's just I was nervous. It was all falling apart right from the get-go. I couldn't get it together. And they stopped me in the audition because they're like, yep, heard enough. It was very much like that American Idol kind of. Right. Okay, we got the gist. Yeah, and then beyond that, they sit down and they adjudicate you based on the notes that they took. And so it was this painful process of right from the get-go, I know I'm bombing. They cut me off mid audition because it's not going well. It's clear to everybody. And you have to go through the pain of like, well, let's talk it through after that. You're like, okay, is this really necessary? We all know what the outcome is here. And needless to say, I did not get into that school. I did not get into that program in my life. I made some other decisions along the way to end me up where I am now. But at that time, I mean, that was absolutely devastating. That was a very hard pill to swallow. So that's one
example
that jumps to mind right away.
No, I think that paints the picture very well.
Yeah.
And I, when we got talking about this, and basically halfway through our conversation here is when that question popped into my head. What popped into my head as well was sparked from something that you said about basically grit and mental toughness of just showing up every day, even if it's not going well. Like you still show up, knowing that you might get kicked in the teeth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Not to be that, cliche person that talks about like days way gone by, but I remember vividly, going through SEAL school, which, ironically was with one David Eric Castro as well, in my same buds class.
Yeah.
And you do a lot of running. Let me just say that as an understatement. You do a lot of running, and they put a premium on your ability to run. And there are some very aggressive distances and cutoff times that you need to make. I am not a good runner. Maybe I am by like CrossFit standards.
Yeah,
but in that
I don't know, man. I don't know about that. I've run with you before. You
in
doing
that
all right.
environment, it was I was not good. So basically, you go out on these runs of whatever distance was, borderline idiotic, and people would just string out because they put like the fastest instructor up there to just see who could maybe even keep up. So the class would string out to 100 people. And somewhere when you're getting close to returning back to base, some instructor would get near the back, and somewhere in like the last 15 or 20 people, he would just like make this chopping motion with his hand.
Oh man.
and that was identified as the goon squad. And so if you were in the goon squad, the rest of the people would finish the run. You would still finish the run, but then you would circle up on the beach. And because you were slow and not as good of a runner as everybody else, what they figured would be a good idea while everyone else stretched and drank water out of a canteen would be just to like beat you for another 45 minutes, tell you terrible things about how you're an awful human being. You shouldn't be here. Why are you wasting everybody's time? This is a voluntary program. You don't have to do this to yourself. It's only going to be harder tomorrow, gentlemen. We've got a long ways to go. You're already taking an extra beating. You're doomed. You're just throwing the towel. And of course, they would be doing that while you're just doing burpees, or bear crawling or doing buddy carries or whatever. And, over the course of 6 months, there's a lot of runs at Buds. You do one at least every day. I was not in the goon squad for 3 days.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of goon squad.
It was a lot of goon squad, my friend. And so, I was nowhere near the honor man of the class, which is like the top athlete and the fastest. But the people that were in the goon squad with me were some of the toughest individuals I knew, just because every day they took an extra kick in the teeth every single day, both physically and mentally. And were told basically, you shouldn't show up tomorrow. And they just made some decision of like, hey, even if I have to take a beating tomorrow, you're going to see me. I'm going to be here tomorrow. And if you do that enough, it ends eventually. It's good to go. Like, so if you find yourself in some situation where, again, there's mental toughness and grit and resolve that are built in some unusual ways, and I'm here to tell you, those environments are usually highly uncomfortable. Sure. But very meaningful and very beneficial in maybe not so obvious ways for the rest of your life. So if Henry, if you find yourself in one of those situations, to some degree, I don't care where you are on the leaderboard, to be honest with you. I do care that you show up every day. I do care that you're making good decisions, you're scaling if need be, you're getting enough sleep, all that stuff. But I don't really care where you are on the leaderboard. And I know that you do at this point in time, but hopefully through, some of the tales and anecdotes, whenever that you and I shared today, you can frame it a little bit better, kind of, realize why you're there, and then maybe it'll be a little bit easier to show up. And the leaderboard plays, even if it's a bit low, maybe it'll still matter, but maybe it won't sting in some sort of way that it used to sting. And I think that would be a success.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think, if we circle all the way back to the beginning of the conversation, we talk about you versus you. I think that there's a lot of metrics that people don't consider or put enough weight on that are just as important as, okay, did I go a couple seconds faster than I did last time? Especially if that is one of those things where like you kind of accept that, all right, I'm going to be at the back of the pack. That's just the way it is for now. Fine, so be it. Look to some other things that are really, really critical and don't get a lot of face time. And those are things that are just as objective, like how often am I showing up? Can I set a PR on attendance? You know what I mean? Like, am I here
That's
3 to 5 times? Yeah. Am I here 3 to 5 times a week, like clockwork, every week, every month going forward? Like, that's a great thing to focus on, especially at the outset, just getting there and having a PR on attendance. Dietary decisions is another one of those. Like, okay, let's come up with a streak. What's the streak that I've got for making good decisions day in and day out? Is that a 2-day streak? Is that a month-long streak? What is the longest streak I've ever done? Let's see if I can challenge myself that way, because that's going to have a huge impact on the rest of it. And that's something that is completely going on in the background that nobody's going to see necessarily, but you are going to have access to whether or not you're doing your job there. So that's one that you kind of have to look inward towards. There's other ones too, like, have I been learning new skills that I could not do previously? That, again, the average person that's just there in the class, they're probably not going to take note of it. But if you're somebody that walks in and you're like, man, I couldn't do a push-up, or I couldn't get over my chin over the bar doing a pull-up 6 months ago, and now I can knock out some sets of that. I mean, that's massive. That's huge, and going to go particularly unnoticed by most people. Your coach will probably know. They should know. But other gym attendees, they probably won't take as much notice of that. And then even to take that one step further, you gain new skills, but what about new range of motion and new ability to do things that you had, some competency in, but now you can do them really well. So I think the squat is a great example of that. A lot of people come in, they have a hard time getting below parallel consistently. And then with some training, with some consistency, they're feeling good. Next thing you know, their technique is improved and it's consistently better. That, again, is something that may not show up as readily on the leaderboard, but it's a huge win. You're like, man, I couldn't get to the bottom of the squat and now I can eat lunch down there. Like, that's a huge, huge win. That's going to go totally unnoticed if all you're fixated on is what place did I come in the class. So look for those other opportunities to, quote, PR, where it doesn't just rely on time on the board or load on the bar, whatever. There's plenty of other objective measurements that you can look to challenge yourself and, keep yourself honest. It's just other ways it's important to skin that cat in other ways and not just get so fixed on one aspect of it.
I love that. I hadn't thought of those in that sort of a way. I think those are fantastic. I will leave with one that I used to do, a little game that I used to play that's, kind of foolish, but I used to mess with some people that I enjoyed. And as back in the day when we'd work out at like level 1 seminars, there were plenty of people on staff that I was never going to beat in a workout. And so, maybe I'm doing a seminar with some raging lunatic of fitness like Chris Spieler. It doesn't, unless it's a 1 rep max deadlift, I'm not going to beat him on anything. It doesn't matter. Even if I sell my soul to the devil. So I would tell him, hey, just so you know, Chris, whatever your score, your time on this workout is, I'm going to add 50% to that. Okay. And if I'm below that, I win. So if you took 10 minutes on the workout and it takes me 14, I beat you. Okay.
I did it.
If it's 15 or more, you beat me. So it's your score plus 50%. That's what I used to do, just the fittest person out there.
Good.
And based upon that, every now and then I get some wins. It was nice.
Yeah. Well, and to kind of take that and let's flip it and look at this through the coaching perspective. Everybody's going to have athletes. I mean, objectively, you will always have an athlete that's last in your class. I mean, there always has to be somebody. And, how do you manage that as a coach? I think looking at some of those things I just mentioned and making sure that those are highlighted and that you are aware of those as a coach is hugely important so that you can take that person and make sure they stay motivated by these other factors that are just as important as their time on the leaderboard. So that's number one. And then number two, I think this is something that maybe I haven't seen at affiliates as regularly, is a willingness to experiment with certain types of class setups that invert the normal order of things. And we used to do these types of things all the time. Like, for example, one of my all-time favorite ways to approach this as a coach was to do Helen, but in individual rounds. So you've got a 400-meter run, you've got 21 swings, and you've got 12 pull-ups. One round of that, and we would run it as a group. You would establish a time for that one round, and then there would be a rest period before the next round of a couple of minutes. Let's call it 2 minutes. Mm-hmm. But what you would do is you would send out the people in reverse order from worst to first. So now you have the guy that was last on the first interval. He's out the gate first, and you try to time it roughly so that you have about the same time differential from where that person finished to the next place finisher. So they have to chase him down. And it kind of creates that effect where, hey, I'm not used to being out in the lead and having people chase me down. Now I got that motivation to try to stay out in front. And conversely, I've got the leader who's usually used to being top dog, and suddenly I'm at the back of the pack. How do I get into gear to try to overcome that deficit? So there's all sorts of ways that you can get creative as a coach to create scenarios like that where it's not always going to be obvious who's first or last or whatever, and you can reward effort. You can create these different, kind of psychological environments for people to react to. And I think that's a lot of fun and just great to mix it up from time to time, if nothing else. So coaches out there,
it's a great scheme.
Think about that. Think about those other elements that are beyond the whiteboard, so to speak, pun intended, and make sure that from time to time you throw in some different schemes so that you aren't always just looking at things through this, first to last kind of linear approach to every class.
And piggybacking, I know I said previously it was my last statement, but it's popping in my head.
Hey.
Piggybacking on what you said about not only the athlete celebrating maybe non-barbell PRs or finding other things to celebrate, your trainers potentially could do this as well. By the time this episode publishes, we should have, unless something goes wrong, it's probably cursed ourselves. There should be an episode. There should be an episode published in which we interviewed Todd Widman, which was fantastic. And he said at the end of some classes he specifically does for kids that he would celebrate not necessarily the winner of the workout, but something that caught his eye of maybe it was effort level, maybe it was consistency in showing up, maybe it was somebody who helped put all the gear away at state, whatever it was. Like, you've got that class's attention and eye as the trainer. You're already in a leadership position. They already, elevate. You're in a bit of an elevated status, whether you realize it or not. So what you say is very impactful to those people. And if you recognize, somebody like, Henry, for example, hey, Henry, I've noticed you've been just coming here every day. Doesn't matter what it is. You don't cherry pick. You pour your heart and soul into it. Just wanted to say it's absolutely noticed, and you're just crushing it. Something as simple as that would probably be a huge deal, regardless of where that person fell on the leaderboard. They'll leave feeling like they were much higher on the leaderboard. So there are some other techniques you could do. So.
Yeah. And to kind of encapsulate that, I would say one of the big takeaways from that conversation with Todd that I was thinking about for the rest of the week was, the idea of trying to highlight as a coach, trying to highlight behaviors that you want others to engage in. Like, that's the real meat of it right there is, okay, what is this person doing that I want everybody else to be doing? And that is not exclusive to somebody who's at the top of the leaderboard by any stretch of the imagination. So if that's as far as it goes for somebody who's coaching, I mean, you're missing the boat big time. There are plenty of stories that go on, kind of under that surface level. And it's your job to highlight that for that reason. Not only is it going to motivate that particular individual, but it's going to bring to the surface, a behavior and a culture that you want everybody else in the gym to participate in. And that's what it's all about.
Love it, man. Love it. I think that's all I've got on it. Anything more from you?
No, I think I said my piece.
I'll put you on the spot one more time. Is it a rest day for you, or do you have a workout today?
What today's Wednesday. I need to work out. I don't have anything specific though. It's one of those days that I had something specific I had to knock out on Monday. I did it. I'm still hurting from it. It's a challenge workout from a friend of mine. Yesterday I did jiu-jitsu, and today I kind of don't have anything on the schedule, but I need to do something. So not sure yet.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. I've got to do something with a 155 barbell. It's 4 things. It's 3 rounds for time of 21 deadlifts, 15 bar facing burpees, 12 chest to bar pull-ups, and then 9 front rack lunges. So I've got a feeling that, it's a lighter deadlift, but the reps stay at 21. So the fact that I'm not giving those the respect that they deserve mean that they will jump up and bite me. And then, of course, the front rack lunges at 155 are going to be, I'm going to be seeing stars. So it'll be a good one.
Yeah. But that'll be fun.
That'll be that. All right. Well, as we say at the end of every episode, now you know what Adrian and I think, which is great, but we certainly don't have all the answers, and we love hearing from everybody out there in the community. So you heard Henry's story. You heard what he's going with. It's probably a story that a lot of people can relate to. If you have been in his shoes and found ways to help yourself change your mindset, what were they? Leave them in the comments. If you had a friend or a client and you're a coach or a trainer dealing with somebody like this, what have you found works well also? Find this episode on the btwb YouTube channel and then post it under the comments there. We read the comments and they absolutely drive the content for future shows. If you don't have anything on this specific topic, but you do have an idea for a future show, post it there as well. Let us know. So that's it. We appreciate your support as always. For Adrian Bosman, I'm Pat Sherwood, and we'll see you next time.